Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our ICT panel discussion and presentation block. On behalf of European Business Association and Information Technology Committee, let me welcome here all of you and thank you for coming. My name is Konstantin Wasyuk. I'm coordinating the IT committee in European Business Association, and today we'll be moderating with my colleague Morten Sagar. Let me tell a few words about Morten. He's Executive Vice President of NV Group and has huge experience in IT, and also Morten responsible for business development and portfolio management. And also maybe we should mention that the NV Group is also have country companies, Span and Infopulse, and so he's the chairman of the board.
Thank you. I would like to welcome you all here as well. Is this on now? Yeah?
No, it's not.
No, it's not. Thank you. I would also like to welcome you here to this meeting on the ICT track on behalf of EVRY and our subsidiary here in Ukraine, Infopulse. We're happy to see you all here. We've heard our two prime ministers earlier today talk about the stronger cooperation between Ukraine and Norway, and we believe the ICT sector can contribute significantly to that. We know that technology is a very important factor in growing the economy. We also know that it could be supportive of reforms and even develop democracies. The ICT community in Ukraine can play a significant role, I think, in developing the country. I think in order to do so, it's important that we gather like this to build a strong voice for what our sector can contribute to the economy. We know that we, through our partnerships and with our local presence as well, can exchange experiences between economies such as Norway and Ukraine. So with that in mind, I would like to welcome the first speaker. It's a pleasure to introduce Ms. Dilek Ayhan. She's a Deputy Minister of the Ministry of Trade and Industry, and she's going to talk about ICT as a driving force for cooperation. Please, welcome.
First of all, let me give my thanks to EVRY for inviting me to give a short address at this parallel session. It's a pleasure to be in Kyiv. This is my first trip to Kyiv, and I have really been looking forward to come to Ukraine. As our Prime Minister said, our hearts are here with the Ukrainian people. It's also a great honor and pleasure to see that so many of you are here with us today. The participation in today's Norwegian-Ukrainian Business Forum is immense, big. There's so many people, and it also shows the great interest towards stronger cooperation between our countries. I think that this sure brings hope and optimism for a bright future for the bilateral economic cooperation between our countries. The Norwegian-Ukrainian Chamber of Commerce and its Ukrainian partners have produced a very interesting program for the Business Forum. For me personally, it's a particular interest and pleasure to attend the parallel session on ICT. My profession, I'm an IT engineer. I'm actually also an entrepreneur. I'm not the typical politician that you tend to see or meet. In the ministry, I said maybe it's a good thing to have an entrepreneur and someone with an IT background taking part as a state secretary. And for me, it's always a pleasure to meet people from the IT sector. The sector is immensely important for the society and the economy as such. The development of useful IT tools has reached a pace never seen before, and the use of the tools is a major contributor for economic growth. I would like to give you some examples from Norway. We have statistics that illustrate the notable importance of ICT in our economy. Firstly, in 10 years, from 2000 until 2010, the employment rate in this sector has increased by almost 100%. Secondly, Statistic Norway states 16% growth in IT services last year. And in a broader sense, recently the European Union concluded that as much as 50% of the productivity growth within the EU will be generated by the use of ICT. ICT is, for instance, nanotechnology and biotechnology, technologies that renders huge possibilities. These technologies may improve existing products, services, and solutions and make them more environmentally sound. At the same time, it paves the way for the development of new products, services, and solutions, and creates more efficient and adjusted processes. Technologies like these are crucial to facilitate necessary innovation, productivity, growth, and adaptability of businesses and the public sector. Ukraine experiences a considerable growth in the share of the world's export of IT products. Outsourcing of IT services is in fast development here, and it is believed to reach $10 billion by the year 2020. Cooperation between Norway and Ukraine in the area of IT and ICT is not new. Everybody present here in the room is familiar with Telenor's investments in Ukraine and their presence in Ukraine through its ownership in Kyivstar. I dare to say that Telenor has contributed considerably to the development of the telecommunications sector in Ukraine. Representatives of the Norwegian companies tell me that Ukraine is an attractive market for ICT services and engineering services based on very competitive wage levels, certified and highly qualified IT specialists, and close cultural links and rules of society. Ukraine's geographical proximity to Norway is also of great importance. I'm impressed that every Ukrainian company, InfoPulse, employs about 1,000 people in Ukraine. The Norwegian consultancy company Tera also operates successfully here. It has been in the Ukrainian market since 2008 and has offices here in Kyiv and in Lviv. Predictable framework conditions are a provision for companies to succeed in foreign markets. The examples I have mentioned tells me that the ICT sector is a sector with opportunities for more cooperation between our countries and where a good framework is in place. Dear friends, we as authorities can only provide the necessary framework conditions. We depend on you, the companies, to make the most of the possibilities the framework provides and the mechanisms we put in place. In this respect, I'm pleased to announce to this audience that Deputy Minister for Economic Development of Ukraine, Mr. Yatsenyuk, and I will sign an agreement on the establishment of a bilateral Commission of Trade, Business and Economic Cooperation this afternoon. We will also conduct an initial meeting in the Commission. The Commission will be a permanent arena where possibilities and challenges in our economic cooperation can and will be discussed, and where problems might be solved. We will be pleased to have your inputs, and we also welcome your participation in our future Commission meetings. To conclude, let me compliment InfoPulse for initiating an IT education program for Eastern Ukrainian refugees in the Kyiv area. I take this opportunity to wish them all the best of luck with the project and the official ribbon cutting to launch the program tomorrow at the Myhola University. And to all participants of this session, I wish you fruitful discussions, exchange of ideas, and future partnerships. And hopefully this will be a good start for strong partnerships between our companies and our nations. And thank you so much. Wish you all the best.
Thank you very much. And next speaker will be Peter Chernyshov. Let me present him. He's president of Kyivstar, and this company is #1 mobile operator in Ukraine, and innovative company from the early years of establishing, and the first company in Ukraine which launched the data transfer over 2G. And now we know that Ukraine, one of the maybe 5 or 6 countries in the world which still has no new generation data transmission over GSM network. So, and that's why maybe we on the edge of the opening this new era for Ukraine, and we hope to have this very soon. Let Mr. Chernyshov tell us about the new possibilities and opportunities from the point of view of new technologies for Ukraine. You're welcome.
First, it's very nice for me to be here. It's my first Ukraine and Norwegian Business Forum, and I understand it's first in itself, right? Before I was working for another Scandinavian country, for Denmark. I was working for many years for biggest Danish investment in this country, and now I represent the biggest Norwegian investment in Ukraine, Kyivstar. As you said, it's a huge investment made by Telenor more than 15 years ago, and it's a very successful company, #1 in Ukraine. But now we are coming to bad news. I'm having a lot of friends from Europe who are coming to the country, and because they know I'm working as a Kyivstar president, they are buying Kyivstar SIM card, and they immediately calling me and saying, there is something wrong in Kyiv, or in Lviv, they come in Lviv sometimes. Your 3G is not working. Yeah, and the sad truth is that yes, our 3G is not working, and our competitors' 3G is also not working in this country, because Ukraine is the last country in Europe without 3G mass coverage, and it's one of the 7 countries in the world that doesn't have 3G coverage. And we are in a good company with the countries like Northern Korea and Syria, which is not maybe good news for our government. And now good news. We are coming to good news, because recently our government finally approved the 3G licensing conditions. So hopefully, if we are all lucky, the auction will be held in the beginning of February next year, and then by the end of the next year we may have the 3G coverage for bigger cities of Ukraine, if we are all lucky. Because as you understand, we should have had this coverage in 2009, 2010, as all the other European countries had. But anyway, Kyivstar, the company that I represent, was established by a very famous, prominent Ukrainian entrepreneur, then supported by investment from Kyivstar, and now it's one of the leading telecom groups in the world called Wimpelcom, headquartered in Amsterdam. And I have to say that from 1997 to 2008, Ukraine was quite a vibrant country from the point of view of telecom development. We did everything, we were very successful as a country, but then everything stopped. And by the time everything stopped, when the good time ended, 2007, 2008, telecom industry as a whole represented 5% of GDP in this country. For your information, right now it's unfortunately only 3% of GDP, because when you don't invest, when you don't offer new technologies to the society, of course your proportion goes down, which is not a good news. And Kyivstar has invested for all those years more than 30 billion Ukrainian hryvnias, and paid more than 35 billion Ukrainian hryvnias in taxes. And the taxes issue is also very interesting. This year alone, Kyivstar has paid 1% of all the collected taxes in this country. So 1%, it's quite a huge share. And try to imagine how much more we could have been paying if the 3G was available in this country. But unfortunately, it's not. And it's degrading the market, of course. it doesn't increase the investment in the country, lack of new services and so on. And some of the people, when they spoke about 3G or 4G, they think of the teenagers watching YouTube clips. That's popular view of the 3G and 4G technologies. And I have to say that we studied a lot of presentations by leading consulting groups, by the Big Four, and the thing is that 3G and then 4G is not about YouTube. Of course, it is about YouTube, but it's not only about YouTube. So the thing is that there is an interesting study by Deloitte and Touche and GSMA saying that the developing countries, not Norway, developing countries like Ukraine, they give example Bangladesh, Algeria, Kenya, Tanzania, and some other countries. When they introduce 3G technology, overall GDP increase from 2 to 4% within 5 years. That's a great news, just by introducing 3G technology, sort of isolated effect of 3G technology introduction in these developing countries. And we don't do this in Ukraine. We didn't do this. Maybe we now do this in February next year. And 1% of GDP in Ukraine is big 15 billion Ukrainian hryvnia. It's a huge money for this country. Even after devaluation, it's still a huge money. And based on the experience we have in other countries, and Wimpelcom is represented in 16 countries all over the world, we have 3G in most of those countries. It takes from 6 to 9 months to cover the biggest cities in the countries with the new technology. We hope to do the same in Ukraine. And another thing is, of course, the price of the license. The price of the license is, we believe, much higher than it should be comparing to the other developing countries, which makes me think another bad news that 3G in Ukraine will be either expensive for consumers or we will not cover all the small cities very quickly, which is not a good news, unfortunately, because we have to carry big data speed for small villages quite quickly. At least that's what the government is saying, and we would not be able to do this with such a license price. But I think I should not bring any more bad news to this audience, because you're waiting for good news, and the good news, of course, that we hope that in a matter of days this government decree will be published, and then all the 3 big mobile companies in Ukraine will be participating in the auction, and soon, in Ukraine, it's very soon, 9 months is very soon, you'll have an access to the new technology. Thank you very much.
We all wish you all the best with the 3G auction, I guess, and that the 3G will be available as soon as possible to the citizens of Ukraine. The next speaker on the list is Mr. Lyubomir Boychuk, who is a delivery manager at our Ukraine subsidiary, Infopuls. Infopuls was founded in 1991. We became part of the now called Every Group in 97, 98, I believe it is, and when it was 250 employees. We've now grown this to more than 1,000 employees. Infopuls have a broad and deep experience from working with customers both in the US, in Northern Europe, as I mentioned, and in the Middle Europe. So I think Mr. Boychuk will talk about the experience and how to extend the global competitiveness of the Ukrainian ICT business. Yeah, please.
And I guess I'm the youngest of all the speakers, so I'm a little bit worried. Well, today I would like to talk about how we can actually expand our global competitiveness of Ukrainian ICT. But before I go into this, I would like to look into where the ICT services, the demand for ICT services are targeting. The Gartner says that increase of CIO sphere of influence in the company is dramatic. It is being expected actually that innovation inside the IT department will grow from 5 to 15% up to 2020, which means that IT is gradually transforming or getting more focus from the supporting function to the business driving function. It looks like it's not only about business processes anymore. It's more about business design and business value that the IT can bring to quite a conventional businesses all around the industry. So what this means for ICT services for tomorrow? It means that new technologies to build new solutions will be heavily used in will be heavily implemented by our companies. It also means that understanding of the customer business domain, business model, and business situation is a key to be successful in cooperation, in the customer's cooperation. Cross-domain competencies, understanding what the business is. For instance, understanding the mining industry in IT won't be a surprising for tomorrow. So these are the expectations that ICT Trends is setting up for the global on the global scale. But how ready Ukrainian market and Ukraine as environment for these challenges of tomorrow? Recently, Industry Watch .org.ua has run a survey where it asked former graduates what they think about the universities. But the first question was actually, what do you do in ICT? And as you can see, almost 3/4 or even more are involved in software development business in ICT, within the ICT industry, at least based on this survey. However, less than 2% are dedicated to analysts. And the analyst, the role of analysts in ICT business is building up the bridge between the customer expectations and understanding of the business and the IT. The analyst sits within the IT development team and explains our developers what the business really wants, what we can suggest to the customer, so the customer would be actually more efficient on their pursuing. So basically, in Ukraine, we know how to create and support software. And this is good news. This is perfect. That's what we do. But we know quite little what to create. Sometimes we ask the question, does the customer knows what they want? I will leave this question unanswered. I guess you all know these answers from your experience. But clearly, the building cross-domain competence is the future of IT. So, but what do we do to make this happen? My bet is, my personal bet, and we strongly believe that in Infopol, that facilitating of internal market is actually what will let us be more experienced and more productive on the global scale. So how do we do it? Well, ICT services is not a new industry for Ukrainian, rather small history. It's 10 years at least of cooperating with the Western companies in a variety of industries, including financial services, agriculture, industry, e-commerce. Very important in current days, the government institutions. We in Ukraine do such an innovative stuff for other countries, for other industries all over the world. But the application of this experience, know-how, and innovation for the local markets can not only benefit them, but as well us by learning how to do business with conventional industries. By that, we train our people to understand the key drivers of the industry. What are the most important factors when they do the decision? What is the critical technologies they want to apply so make their business better? The second aspect that I would like to talk why we actually have the ICT industry and what is important to facilitate our internal markets is education. Without education, there won't be any ICT. Ukrainian education is good. Well, we know that Ukrainian education may be on a lower trend now, and it is going into opposite trend that we might want. But we know that that Ukrainian education system is good enough to produce such a competitive ICT industry in the world. But what we can do to meet up the expectations of tomorrow? Well, two problems of the educational system of Ukraine are, first, the widening gap between the competence level of fresh grads and the minimum requirement level of our companies to hire the person. So the innovation into education system, and helping our government officials to understand what the requirements of education is the key. Another problem of education system of Ukraine is the motivation inside the education system. Look, we have 1-2 year experienced guy who is earning times more than the teacher. The teacher who taught this guy to earn this money. This bring in the longer run demotivations to stay in the institutions, to stay in the educational system, and to make it more innovative, productive, and in the end of the day, benefit our country and our ICT industry. So I believe that ICT and ICT industry agents, InfoPulse in particular, and we do it a lot. We need to support financially with a scholarship and grants our education system, because that's what will bring the motivation for the lecturers to stay in the university. Some other, let's say, international exchange programs, also facilitated by international companies like we are, can bring more and more and better and more innovative things into the education system. Well, my last slide is actually somehow concluding all of this. So the supporting of local markets, contribution to educational system, and the years of experience of ICT industry working according to the Western standards, we have gathered the professionalism, expertise, and reputation that now it's very good time to apply on the local market and to get with the local market stronger on the global scale. My last slide is actually the great scholar from Harvard Business School who said that innovation is a central issue of economic prosperity. I believe strongly we are inside, the better and more globally prepared we are outside. Thank you for your attention.
Mr. Javed Choudhou, he is Director of Technology in ITERA. So ITERA is a Norwegian company with a very essential footprint in Ukraine, and it's exactly very interesting to know how to combine the potential and the resources of Norwegian and Ukrainian people, the mentalities and other issues in order to achieve company goals. And Mr. Javed will tell us about this experience.
Thank you. Introduce you how we operate in the Ukraine. We have been here for 5-6 years, so I've met different challenges, but also succeeded in different things. The theme is achieving business goals with blended teams. So it's not surprise what we are talking about. But before we go there, a little bit what is ITERA is. We are a communication and technology company. 465 employees actually. Very value-based. We are. Innovation is one core value we have. We always look for skilled people, even in Norway, but also in our Ukrainian organization. We have a presence in Scandinavia, Norway, Sweden, and Denmark, and a huge portion of our operation is also from Ukraine. A little bit more of what we do. We do a whole stack from strategy to development and maintenance of applications. The biggest part is technology and development. So this is what we do. We have many years been leading in collaboration solutions, portal solutions, and distribution solution. Very much as this front-end solution for end users, for our customers. A little bit where we are, and we drive for a hybrid model, and I will come back to what this includes. We also have this multi-sourcing strategy. We have different offices. We have both in Kyiv, Lviv, and recently we opened also in Bratislava to get a bit more balance. Yeah, I think I will drop this slide there more. The case I'm going to introduce you a bit more in is Storebrand. It's one of the largest customers we have. Some key figures about Storebrand. It's in the financial insurance industry, a large player, Nordic market. It has both commercial customers but also private customers. Half of the population's pensions are kind of managed through that organization. It's a very big organization. Business areas are primarily insurance, guaranteed pensions, and bank and asset management. So we have been cooperating with that organization for a long time. What we offered a corporate model is a hybrid model. This means that we work together with Solberg IT departments, but also ICT and Norway. We have some resources from there. Then the majority of resources is from our Ukrainian organization. This is a part of the strategy the client has. And we feel that what they want there. And of course the Storebrand is also catched by the digitalization era. So this is how the world was for them also. And of course this is how the world is becoming more and more for each companies. But in almost all sectors also. We like it or not, we have to be a part of that digitalization evolution. And this, of course, this has some effects for all sectors, all businesses, and of course also for our clients. So no stuff there. Yes, a little bit more about the delivery model. What we do actually is combine people or skilled people from the Ukrainian organization together with our Norwegian capabilities, and that is also blended into the Storebrand IT department and those people. We work very close with them. We have been done with that for many, many years, and this gives a very, very skilled and blended teams, which continuously delivers ongoing throughout the year. They are involved in almost everything what they do, especially on end user solutions. So this is a model which works very good for us. Of course, in Storebrand, a lot of interest, a lot of stakeholders, a lot of people in a big organization, a lot of complexity, but still our model works good. And this is to show that it is possible to achieve business goals in quite complicated organizations with this kind of setup. A little bit about, I'm not going to use too much, this is the program they are driving, and we have been involved. Actually I was part of to establishing the whole program from A to Z. I was there for 9 months. Quite a large program, different kind of people, different kind of roles, about 80-90 people involved, and this is yeah, it's up and running now. It will be run a couple of years more as well. So a bit market drivers for potential blended teams. What do we see? Why are we in Ukraine? Why have we been here for 5-6 years? Because we have been quite long here. And that's of course our clients in different sectors, different markets, different situations. They are a bit busy about cost-cutting strategies. Flexibility and scalability is also a factor. Competence and capabilities. Norway is not that big country, so access to qualified people is also a bit limited. Of course, in Norway, past years, the demand for IT engineers have been much higher than actually the supply, and this means therefore people also custom look outside that market. Of course, demanding labor market. It's higher cost in Norway and combined with Ukraine, so we can combine our capability here. So why partnership in Ukraine? 5-6 years we have been here. Our experience, very good academic institutions. It's a kind of historical, very good qualified people. High level of IT competence is also Ukraine known for. Good domain knowledge, of course, that is a bit challenging. There's some challenges around that as well, but generally people or resources are known for a good domain insight. Good labor market and access to people. There are more cultural similarities than differences also. Of course there are differences to different people, but there are more similarities than if you go into it. Good language skills is also a factor because we work very close with our clients. And before actually the Norwegian shut down this route, but it was very easy to come to Kyiv. Hopefully it will open again soon. So small insight of what we do, how we work in blended teams in a very complex client. And still achieve the business goals and deliveries. And at the end there some critical success factor what we see, managerial approach from the client, it has to be adjusted. When you drive for these kind of models, you need a bit more closeness. You have to follow a bit more in the starting point. Of course, the IT departments itself, it has to be adaptable. They have to adapt these kind of models. Also, jointly access or align processes is a good thing to do if you want to have success. The whole thing eventually melt down to a partnership. If we work together as a partners, then we will also succeed much more than other approaches. We also have experienced that it's not only that our resources, our people travel from Ukraine to Norway, but it has to be vice versa as well, because then we get to know each other much more. Eventually, a big conclusion, when people work in a partnership, there's actually no limits for what you can achieve. So location doesn't matter actually. Thank you.
And we have quite enough time for questions and answers. I propose you to ask questions to our respective speakers, because the topics were very interesting and actual up to this moment, and let's ask them maybe details about their vision. Morten, maybe you have also. We're also very exact and hearing very attentively.
Are there any questions, anybody? I will urge you to take the opportunity to ask questions from our three speakers. They're still here. Challenge them maybe. Anyone? We've heard about it. Good. I have a question back there.
Hi, Igor Luzhansky, NUBF company. Just guys, it's very interesting to see your opinion how Ukraine can increase its competitiveness in the ITC market. What would be your advice or vision for us? Thank you.
Should we start in the front there?
Yeah, we strongly believe that education and strong markets inside Ukraine can lead us to the global competitiveness. So as it was presented, contribution of ICT industry actively, probably more actively on the local markets and learning from them, basically what the industry really is, applying the best knowledge that we have gathered on the Western side, learning from existing markets and reapplying the knowledge again outside can bring us to the wider markets. education is a key. Obviously, cross-competent, cross-field education programs. That usually our education is quite conventional. When you study math, it's only the math, and there is no way you can learn, for instance, finance. But kind of a cross-competence, cross-domain education is will be really defining the agenda of ICT of tomorrow, I guess.
I think a couple of advices. The language skills is always important. We see often there's a bit of variation there, so that's a good thing. Language skill is good. And the last thing also, which is very important, it's domain knowledge. And of course that is kind of, you can't achieve it in 1 week or 2 weeks, but you need to work with that. And it will come. These two are like the most important things I think I would raise.
On Challenge, you worked with both Danes, Ukrainians, and Norwegian now. So maybe you could also address how could we work with the, let's call it, our cultural similarities and differences to increase our cooperation.
You're asking about the cultural things now, yes? Yes. Okay, that's a good question. I recently counted in my business life, I had bosses from 13 different nationalities. So I can cope with different cultures. And talking about Norwegians, Norwegians somehow sure very much that there are 4 small Scandinavian countries. I lived for 2 years in Sweden. I worked for many years for Danish company. Now I'm working for Norwegian company. They all think that they're extremely different. If you ask Swede, how similar are you to Norwegian? You hear bad things in response, because they start saying that this country got some oil somewhere and they are rich and okay. Anyway, very small countries, 5 to 10 million people, and me coming from much bigger country, sometimes very difficult to understand how you can be so different. But okay, we have to adjust. The decisions are taken on consensus in some countries. And we have to live with that. Okay, I can even give you some anecdote on cultural differences if you want.
I think we would like to share that, please.
All right. I have my favorite anecdote on cultural differences in the world. There is, United Nations ran a survey, and it was one question. Please, what's your opinion on the lack of the food in the rest of the world? And this survey completely failed. It failed in Italy and Argentina, I'm sorry, because nobody understood what was please. It failed in Russia and Ukraine because nobody understood what your opinion is. Failed in Scandinavia because nobody understood what the lack of food is. And failed, obviously, in the United States because nobody knew what the rest of the world was.
My name is Alex Nikolaenko. My question or suggestion, you asking what would be the options for Norway and Ukraine to cooperate. I think important is there is no structure in Ukrainian policies. There is no digital policy, for example, for agriculture. There is no digital policy for education. There is no digital policy for healthcare. And this is where Norway could help, is to help establish those policies for the state. What should be the state policy on a specific industries? Could be like a digital forum specifically on the state policies, on digital policies on a specific industries. And that would open a lot of opportunities for Norway business to cooperate in Ukraine on the ICT sector. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Volodymyr Vargola, and I have a question to the IT companies. At this moment and for the next several years, we have a number of innovation technologies such as big data, Internet of Things, clouds, and so on, which will develop very rapidly in the world. How Ukraine and Ukrainian companies can be an active part in the development of these technologies and not think in the future that we are the last country in the world which implement these technologies in our country.
We are already. Ukraine is the leading and global country in the global picture of IT, and thus all the technologies which appears and will be next years or maybe decades exactly will be implemented and delivered also in Ukraine, because we are now one of the leading companies in the world and in Europe exactly. That's why our target and goal is to keep tight on this trend and support both from the government, maybe not so essential, but support from the internal power of companies and vision for the strategy for the next years, for the future. So I think that technologies is already developed here, but unfortunately we maybe not able now to use all the technologies due to some again these 3G issues and so on and so forth. I mean in our common life, but it will change very soon, and jointly we will do this.
I support you. These trends you're pointing at, like social mobility, big data, cloud, is really driving the change of our industry and the way that we could, together with the other industries, form a very different business models, basically. So that's important trends. Maybe you have some comments on that from Infopulse and Itera as well, since you are the experts here.
Okay, and all the buzzwords here in Ukraine. I know people who are doing this. We do it. The only challenge remains how the local people, local environment can benefit for all the things we do in our offices here in Kyiv, Kharkiv, Odessa, Lviv, and other places in Ukraine. And apply this knowledge, apply this innovation and know-how to the local environment. Again, the government, again, the conventional industries, and the rest. So the challenge, how to put them together in front of each other onto one table and agree and deliver.
Actually, what we do, we are doing that. In our model, we work in a partnership, so we do that. Bulk cloud services, big data, we are involved in the same projects, so we are building that competence on cross borders there. So it's not a new thing for us, at least in our model.
So when I heard about the education system needed kind of more food, that's important to keep developing the education system in order to provide up-to-date capabilities to the IT industry. And I think that's kind of a part of what Ukraine can do to make sure you can also contributing to developing your own country. Any other questions?
Hello everyone. My name is Vasyl Matyashowski. I'm from Lviv Business School. I'm in charge for technology management program, and my question is to companies about what knowledge you need for your senior people, for your management staff, because this is what we try to deliver, and we'll appreciate your feedback. Thanks.
To be sure, what kind of competence on senior people? It depends, though, of course, what kind of senior people we're talking about. But some general things, I think, what we appreciate in our clients is, of course, back to the cooperation and communication a bit. That should be in place. In Norway, we work a bit different, very close, very open. It's very non-hierarchical, actually. So you can take a part of a development team or with the business, a very close relationship. We work together with against like an end result. Of course, in the ICT sector, you need to have this relevant competences that can have a big variation, of course, from customer to customer. That should be in place as well, but that's not easy to answer like in a generic way there. So I don't. You want to add something on that? Yeah.
I would totally support the communication. The communication, the proper business communication that could be a great benefit for our industry. I support that probably some focused competence knowledge as well, but it very much applies for the customer to customer, as was said. So any ways of teaching people how we can cooperate on a higher level, like a mid-management level, between each other, between the parties, probably learning some cross-cultural differences. It's important because everybody is different, as we know. So yeah, but it's all around communication to some extent.
While you're thinking, maybe I could strengthen that a little bit and say there are kind of three things that comes to mind. One thing is the cultural affinity, as they touched on, I believe. The second one for me is, let's call it project management. We are a very project-oriented industry, and that's a kind of a complex type of leadership. So to understand how to succeed in complex projects, I think is a very important management skill. And the third is not to be so tied into the inner beauties of technology, but more the application of technology seen from a user point of view. So that's kind of what the management can add to the more technology-oriented people in order to make sure we apply the beauty of the technology as well. Anyone else?
I'm Alex with GIT Group, and that's a small IT company from a nearby city, Chernihiv. So my question about global sourcing for partnership, how you do sourcing actually, because I've heard cities like Lviv, Kyiv, Odessa, Kharkiv, the biggest. But what I know from my experience, a lot of developers, they came from small cities. A lot of small cities have their very good education institutions. And my question is, how do you do global sourcing for partnership? How can you find a little company within those cities? I'm just interested how we can stand out. A small company from a little city can find a partner in Norway.
What we do, it's of course we have one professional organization here in Kyiv. They have the whole area. They look for both partnerships, smaller companies, and this. So we go through them actually. It's not a direct that we from Norway try to find partners. It's our sister organization in Ukraine who does that. And they have a very good overview of the market and the competitors and the competency field. So this is what we do though.
We've actually taken your idea and implemented it in India. Since we're basically a small country, a small company in a global scale, we thought instead of competing for the competencies in Bangalore, where all the global players are, we started a business in the northern part of India, in a tier 2 city called Chandigarh. And we see we are a lot more attractive employer in that part of the country and are able to compete for the resources kind of on another level. So your idea is probably something we should think about more in Ukraine as well. We are already in several cities in Ukraine, so I think we'll thank you for the idea and see how we can develop that further.
And also from IT committee, I should say that our activities is also aimed to the support of such companies, not big yet, but you know that all companies started from the small. And our activities also pointed on the supporting and representing the products and companies, so you can also cooperate with us. And as today we cooperate with Norwegian companies and Norwegian Chamber of Commerce, we do this for all IT businesses and support. It's our function in EBA. So please, you're welcome to contact and communicate further. So any questions? Okay, thank you very much. And we have a break for lunch till 2 p.m. And at 2 p.m. we're waiting for you here to continue with a presentation and small discussion. So thank you very much. 2 p.m. right here. See you. Have a nice meal.
So welcome back. Our next speaker is a former deputy minister of the finance in Norway. He served in this position for 8 years and is very experienced, as you can tell then, from 2005 to 2013 under the then Prime Minister, Mr. Jens Stoltenberg, now Secretary General of NATO, you might know. So he's more kind of involved in some of the things happening around there. I'm pleased that Mr. Roger Skjerva is here today. He is now Chief Economist representing ICT Norway. ICT Norway is an organization taking care of the interests of the IT companies in Norway, and they are doing that in a very well way. Based on his experienced background, it will be a great interest to listen to his message today, the Norwegian ICT market and the basis for business between Ukraine and Norway. Please welcome Roger Skjerva.
Because the topic, ICT, is about the future, the surroundings, is in the core of Europe, in historically dramatic times. And you, the participants here, you happy few, are smart and good people, aren't you? So it's very nice to be here. Now let me start with the first chapter. What is ICT in Norway? ICT Norway represents the Norwegian ICT industry, from the major players to small one-man companies. Our mission is to make Norway a leader in digital economy, in digital technology, for the benefit for the Norwegian economy and its citizens, and to expand market opportunities for our members. Here are some of the fields we work with, and I guess every Opera, Telenor and Itera are the most well-known Norwegian companies in Ukraine. Because the ICT business has become large in itself, and because all future value creation will more or less be based on IT, we think that the most important business in Norway is the ICT business. What is Norway? Only 3 hours flight from here, you can find a small and open economy with high costs, a lot of new technology, high level of social security and trust among people. Furthermore, the country has a very good score on international rankings, like number 1 at UN's Human Development Index, number 6 at Ease of Doing Business, the World Bank Index, and number 5 at Best ICT Maturity in the world. World Economic Forum has probably the most thorough evaluation when it comes to measuring how ICT mature all countries are. It's called the Network Readiness Index, Network Readiness Index, and detailed data from 158 economies are organized in 10 pillars containing 54 indicators assumed to be important for being great in ICT. And here you can see the 10 best countries in the world, and as you can see, the north of Europe are champions of the world. So Norway takes the position as the 5th best country. According to World Economic Forum, Norway's main strength is infrastructure and individual usage, while making an easier way from innovation to business represents the largest area to improve. Norway has a large economy, but a small population and a limited home market. Consequently, our companies need to export and our consumers need to import. Our consumers may be few, but in return they are demanding, and they are advanced when it comes to technology, and they have money to spend. Moreover, and importantly, Norway needs foreign labor, competence and new ideas from abroad to grow further. The information sector is the third largest sector in Norway. A driving force is the widespread usage of ICT technology in the population. As you can see, you can meet most Norwegians at Facebook. The level of the ICT market is high, but the growth continues. The latest numbers shows strong economic results. For example, an annual growth of nearly 6% in value added for our companies, and impressive over 11% in annual growth in new investments. So, to sum up, why doing business with Norwegians? First, world-leading infrastructure. 2, outstanding test market. 3, if you have profitable investment projects, it is possible to find financing. Let's look upon key factors for IT business between Ukraine and Norway. Ukraine is in the middle, not only geographically, between West Europe and Russia, Asia, between North Europe and Africa, but also in the middle when it comes to network readiness or ICT maturity. The Network Readiness Index ranks Ukraine as number 81 among 158 countries. Not surprisingly, skilled labor and affordable ICT infrastructure are looked upon as strengths. The biggest problem in Ukraine is lack of political stability, lack of predictable regulations. Now let's look at some company examples. Infopulse, yes, you heard the presentation earlier today. I will not say much more, but just mention that this is one example of an existing Ukrainian company with Norwegian owners. But is there any new business opportunities? New companies in new areas? Yes, maybe in e-health and welfare technologies. We have a cluster of medtech companies in Norway, and at Oslo University Hospital they have good experience with building up medtech in low-income countries. And I have been told that the Norwegian Ministry of Foreign Affairs are considering an e-health commitment as a part of an aid program for Ukraine. So here there can be new business opportunities. Originally they had Norwegian owners, Telenor, but they are now locally owned. And this is a positive development. But lack of skilled IT people is an increasing problem in Norway. So hiring skilled people from Ukraine will probably remain the biggest area for business cooperation between our two countries. We educate too few IT people in Norway, so we need to offshore to really release the full growth potential of the ICT economy in Norway. We can't do everything onshore. Some activities can be done offshore in Asia and Africa. Other activities is better solved nearshore in East Europe. And in East Europe, Ukraine is an attractive destination for offshoring or nearshoring, which is a better expression when you see it from the Nordic. In this report from 2010, Ukraine is ranked as the most attractive country in the East. I leave it to you to discuss how much of this has changed during the last year. So you should know that Ukrainians should know that these are the factors Norwegian companies must consider before they take the decision on moving production abroad. Costs, skills, culture and political regulations is common for all companies, but IT companies must, more than others, also take data protection of intellectual property and infrastructure into due consideration. We have a global IT industry. It's very natural to harvest gains from international division of labor. The cost savings for Norwegian companies and the source of income for Ukraine is beneficial for both parties. Why nearshoring can be a better choice, or we could say why Ukraine can be a better choice than India? And the answer is, in short, with lesser cultural conflicts, lesser travel costs, and when you are more or less in the same time zone, it is easier to have the similar business model. The learning curve is gentle, and you can go faster down to business. Finally, I have a bit of advice for the Ukrainians and a message to the Norwegians. First, a bit of advice to the Ukrainians. Things to know when doing business with the Norwegians. First, don't confuse informality with unprofessionality. Two, the Norwegians appreciate direct talk and expect honesty, also on bad news. But they don't find it easy to be very open about feelings and thoughts outside business life, if it's not about sport, skiing, for example. And three, we may look a bit naive, like the person with the bowler cap to the left here in the picture. But in general, Norwegians very much dislike to operate outside law and order and have zero tolerance for corruption. Last Saturday, the Economist gave a strong message to the world. Don't chicken out of Kyiv, they said. Also a message to the Norwegians. And 3 days later, here we are. The Norwegians are in, and we are here to stay. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much for staying in Kyiv. And let me introduce the next speaker, Vladimir Bek. First of all, he's chairman of IT committee, and also he's co-founder and chief executive officer of Sigma Software. Company is a part of Sigma Swedish group with more than 2,000 people and operating in 11 countries. Vladimir is almost 20 years or more than 20 years in software development and IT sector, and he will tell us and give us information about the IT expert industry of Ukraine, the current state and what is going on now. So, please.
I will tell you
some facts, some updates about current Ukrainian export-oriented sector status and the activities we do in European Business Association IT Committee in regard of IT sector of Ukraine, and we also focus on things how IT industry in Ukraine actually matures up in recent 20 years or so. And provide some examples on the basis of Sigma, because there are two heads. One head is in regard of EBA IT committee, and also I'm responsible for operations of Sigma software in Ukraine. The European Business Association is grasping together about 900 members, and we communicate with the government, Ukrainian government, on behalf of industries by means of committees. And EBA IT committee is one of the committees which is focusing on export-oriented, mainly on export-oriented sector of IT, which is represented both by domestic companies and by joint ventures and by foreign companies establishing their operations in Ukraine. As you see, there are companies which are working with Nordic sector. It's Terra and Sigma. There are also bigger companies operating in the market, like Cyclone, EPAM, SoftServe, put together thousands of people in Ukraine, and also companies like Ericpol, which is a Polish company but biggest supplier for Ericsson, which is Nordic company. It operates in Poland and in Ukraine. We put together some sort of a concept how we see that this sector should evolve in Ukraine. But then we focus on very necessary things for the businesses. One is the stable and predictably regulated legal environment, which would enable companies to operate in predictable way, because it's very important, especially for the companies which work with demanding and bigger clients abroad, who, as colleague from Norway mentioned, have zero tolerance to corruption, etc. So we need to structure the legal environment. This is number one. Number two is to ensure the availability of resources. Although in the ratings, etc., Ukraine is marked as quite a preferable provider in terms of resource availability, we still have a lack of resources. Therefore, we need to take steps practically wise, not only at individual level, because many companies, they have their labs, etc., but from EBA committee, we try to push some structural changes, working directly with Ministry of Education, with Cabinet of Ministers and various work groups in Parliament, trying to influence the structural changes, so that it's not only about the company's initiative, it should have some sort of cumulative effect. And the third factor is about promoting Ukraine as IT supplier country, because when the bigger customers decide about moving to Ukraine, they think not just about the companies, they think about countries and all the risks. And as it was shown in the previous presentation, you've seen there's quite a plenty of them. So when promoting the country, we need to speak clearly about things which are pros and cons, and have an open dialogue to attract people, but not promise more than we can actually deliver. We need to keep our niche and demonstrate our trend, how we grow, and then we will be adequate. We will have adequate position in the market. Practically wise, what we've done in, I think it's almost 5 years of existence of IT committee. So we established the dialogue with government, and we had to re-establish it several times because we had quite big changes in the government over recent years. And practically wise, in legislation field, I think it was in 2010, the new tax reform had to implement quite dramatical changes to things affecting the IT industry, and we communicated with the government at the time, created a working group to protect things IT industry needs for successful development. And legislation amendments were included in tax system. Within the scope of IT education, we developed a concept. We developed a concept how the IT education should be supported at the level of government. Which actions should be taken short-term, mid-term, long-term. An example is that one thing is that the amount of IT specialists should be increased at the level of government ordered by government. Then the next point was the inclusion of business representative in scientific how it's called, scientific committees or something like that. And the result was a document signed by former Prime Minister Mr. Azarov, and the document was actually put in action. Some of the elements were actually implemented. Some of them are not, because we have changes now. But we still continue pursuing on that, and we'll continue on with that tenure. Personal data protection, one thing which is very important for our Nordic colleagues, especially for Norwegians, as I understand. That point was actually initiated by a company member working with Norwegian customers, and we worked with different authorities in Ukraine and in European Union in regard to data protection legislation, and we put together guidelines and code of conduct for the companies, members of IT committee, to follow things so that the companies can be more predictable and more structured in the way of working with personal data protection. And we also initiated a dialogue with governmental body in Ukraine to introduce changes necessary to be in synchronization with the practices in European Union. So that the goal is that the companies operating in Ukraine would be able to demonstrate that the data protection rules are obeyed. Talking about the IT sector of Ukraine, in numbers, it looks quite promising to develop it further on. So it really grown like 10 times since 2003. Currently, according to various estimates, it's about 2 billion of export sector, and the sector was growing even into the worst time when the economy slowed down, because when there was crisis in 2008, world crisis, Ukrainian teams still continued to grow up because we were able to provide some cost benefits and be very useful at that time to really help our customers from abroad to continue the operations, to ensure business continuity by means of providing services from Ukraine. Another important thing is that Ukrainian IT sector really, export part of IT sector really evolved from what was called simple outsourcing to fully fledged IT consulting. I've seen quite a lot of discussions recently that, well, Ukraine should push startups, Ukraine should push product development, solution development, but Ukraine actually does. Everything of that. We need to increase that, but we need to find replacement. We should get rid of the word outsourcing, basically, because what the Ukrainian companies are doing now, it's in more respect evolving IT consultancy, which is currently, of course, it's not yet at the level of the companies like Accenture or IBM, but it's up and coming. And I believe that in coming years, if we work with education legislation, if we increase the amount of cross-domain experience coming to the country, the IT sector will evolve into a fully fledged IT consultancy. And if we look at things, what a company doing now, we will see that the amount of people like analysts, user experience people, user experts are increasing, and it's now not just about software development or testing, it's about very tight communications with customers, building joint teams. And I have some examples later on some slides how we do this, especially with our Nordic colleagues. But with Nordic people, it is twice as important, because we started working previously with Americans. They like specifications, they like things to get something formal, etc. When working with Nordic colleagues, it's all about mutual trust, understanding, and feeling that, well, we not only understand each other, but we can practically move together in some synchronization. Therefore, communications and joint work on things, like joint work on analysis of requirements and working with the customers on site is vital. And I will come to Sigma. Sorry, a little bit. Sigma is one of the examples that we started. We started in 2002, and 12 years ago. That time we started with rather more simpler things. For now, things we are doing with companies like SIS or Volvo. These are bigger solutions, much bigger solutions, and these industrial solutions. Sigma is about 1,700 employees in 11 countries, and I represent Sigma Software, which is a company of Sigma Group. We are 450 people residing in Ukraine, Poland, and recently opened up an office in the US. And we are part of Sigma Group providing nearshore software consultancy. Talking about the niches we work, the niches are non-IT companies which have comprehensive demands for IT solutions. It's like Volvo or SIS, for example. We also work. We also develop software products for companies which are focusing on that. Software houses like Formpipe, for example, in Sweden, and we work helping startups to develop their innovative platform in a fast and efficient way. So it's mostly in the US, companies like Collective, for example. It's an advertising company. The models, how the cooperations can be structured. It can be either joint projects or joint teams. Should it be in Ukraine or together? With Nordic, when talking about Nordic cooperation, the most efficient are blended teams. Blended teams enable to grasp knowledge together, to accumulate it, and to really apply some combined synergy coming from comprehensive domain expertise of our colleagues in Sweden or Norway, and technical and horizontal expertise, like usability, for example, or platform knowledge coming from Ukrainian side. I will focus on several examples, just to be a little bit in line with the topic of the cooperation between Nordic and Ukraine, how it can be done in the best way. SIS is the company, you know, of course, I think most of you tried to fly this at least once, SIS. When we started to work with SIS, it was a question from them, well, there is no way for you to get in this quite a legacy, complicated system. We need to, how we should do this to be successful. And we found a way. We put together a team of SIS experts, experts from Ukraine who are good in prototyping, usability, architecting. We put all them together in one room, studied the requirements on the fly, so what should be, how the system should look like, and then we developed, just sitting in the room, we developed in a very fast way the visual prototype, how things should do. And from our Swedish colleagues, it was for our Swedish colleagues, it was understanding, yes, that we can understand it, we can really build the system, and for us it was an understanding that we are able to grasp that domain. After this day of joint work, we came out with the visual prototype complementary to all the specifications, and then the work started. It is purely an example of combined team, and it's quite a big solution actually. Another good example is the cooperation with Volvo. It lasts for almost, it started in 2007 actually, so it's quite 7 years in a row already. And we developed together the system which is serving all the dealers of Volvo's parts. So would it be so this is a system which offers parts both for dealers and for end customers, so B2B and B2C. Quite large, scalable and comprehensive platform. So I will not focus on bigger amount of things, so I think it's less relevant to the topic of our discussion. But what I want to say is that Ukrainian IT industry really Ukrainian export service sector of IT industry is really going from outsourcing to IT consulting. I think we need to communicate it more clearly, both outside and in the country. Second point is we need to support Ukrainian IT sector healthy growth. One of the ways we do this in European Business Association, in IT committee, working on legislation, education, and country promotion. And we think it's a good idea to combine the efforts in the most practical way, being long-term thinkers, be very focused on particular areas, and be also as simple as possible, but not primitive when possible. Focus on very practical things. Ukrainian IT industry actually developed to that state almost without any real help from the government. It developed mostly just because there was no distraction.
So I'm in sales. I'm actually looking for new clients for Infopost in Western Europe and also across the Atlantic. I feel today I usually put labor cost arbitrage in the end. And if I'm not asked about it, I will not mention it at all. I would like to ask my fellow salespeople in the room, how do you sell today, Ukraine, and how do you deal with the business continuity concerns that some customers have, especially German customers are very, very anxious about this, to ask me, how are you maintaining delivery continuity if the political situation gets worse? I even had some comments like, are the Russian tanks already in Kyiv? That was last year. So how do you deal with it? I think you are also from the IT industry, yeah? Yatsenyuk, you told. Yes, you. No? I asked you the question before.
Well, let's split the question to two parts. One is about labor arbitrage and second about the geopolitical risks. Talking about the labor costs, then one thing is that when comparing the prices, you should compare the total cost ownership, basically. And if you include, if you have the person in Lisbon, for example, in total cost ownership, it should be included also the price. I don't know exactly how it's there, but for example, in Sweden, so when you need to lay off a person, you pay quite a lot extra. Therefore, if you need a person just for a limited amount of time, or you are unsure that you want to keep the person more than a certain amount of time, then total cost ownership will be anyway much higher because of that things which are extra when you employ a person locally, or if you subcontract a person or buy a person in Ukraine. And it's still lower actually. And you can of course find a person in Lisbon, for example, but it also goes to technical competence, skill, and scalability versus cost. It's not only cost. It's cost, quality, scalability, several factors, and unfortunately geopolitical risk as well, which should be taken into account. Then it's kind of measuring things one against others. About the geopolitical risks, well, I think that for the time being, almost no one can really predict how the things will go on, frankly speaking. Therefore, we can look at the areas in Ukraine which are more safer. Kyiv in the center is, I think, quite safe. And actually the companies take comprehensive business continuity measures to be able to reallocate people, reallocate data, and do the things to decrease level of risk. And it's also about the companies to demonstrate how they practically do. For example, we in Sigma, we moved all the data outside of Ukraine. We are sitting in Kharkiv, and Kharkiv just near the front line. And we just got prepared for emergency relocation if necessary. We opened office in Lviv. We have the office in Kyiv as well. Therefore, the best we can do now, and we do this, is to do practical steps towards ensuring business continuity and
it should be real things, not just written on paper.
There's a clear link between wages and productivity. So when the wages rise, then you have to be more productive. But it also goes the other way. When you got more productive, then the wages will rise. So yeah, there's a clear link.
The next question, please. No? Sure.
I've been working as salesman for 5 last years, and since that time I had around 100 leads, and constantly I'm dealing with cost, with risk, and etc. So I would start from the second part. One of our customers asked us to move this winter. They asked to try to move team to Bulgaria or Romania. After dealing all calculations, customers refused go to even Bulgaria. We did a quite big research. We got Bulgaria and Sofia or Burgas, other cities, and it was not success to move Ukrainian people that countries.
So the plan was to move the people or to move the positions and get people hired there?
Both. So we just proposed rates, and in Romania it was I think 30% higher. The lowest was Bulgaria, but the level of people they just refused to even hire that team in Bulgaria. So talking about to customers, you should be patriotic, and I'm really sure that Ukrainian developers are really skilled guys, and all of us, we should keep that working places in Ukraine. And regards cost, it depends. So you could start from cost if customers ask you, or just at the end. So it depends on each particular situation. Thank you.
My name is Kai Gulbrandsen. I'm the CTO of Kyiv. The mobile companies in all over the world, they are going towards the digital future. Huh? They are changing from buying and being served from the physical stores, shops to internet. Huh? That's the transition everybody is doing. Challenging. My challenge is that within Kyiv, I'm lacking extremely good IT architects that can help me to make sure that the architecture that we are planning to deliver is the right one. Huh? I challenge you guys here from Ukraine, come to me and tell me how to do it, because I have not yet seen that competence in Ukraine. So I will be happy to meet you guys in our office for you to demonstrate how to do this properly, for sure. Thank you.
It's a good challenge, actually, very good, and there are and I think it's more or less doable now, at least. For example, in 1998, I was working with a German company, Billing. We took a bigger software to be handed over by Ukrainian specialists that time, and that time there was clearly lack of competence of working with industrial solutions that time. Since that time things evolved, but still your question should be addressed probably to the smaller niche companies who are focusing on that things you mentioned, innovative things, or also to a bigger consultancies like Infopulse or Itera, or like Sigma presented here, since we are all working with startups which are grasping that innovative things, thinking of doing things in integration, and if we see your demand and understand it, if you articulate it in the way that we can think of it, we can probably come to some ideas practical wise. Because what is good in bigger companies, it's that there are many teams working on cross-domain things, and you can find a good things all together adjacent to each other and complementary. What is good with smaller niche companies that you can find the things you need right away, because they may be in that field, and maybe if the company is doing exactly what you need, you can just buy it, the company.
So maybe we should have the customers on that side, have the vendors on that side. Anyway, any other questions? No? I think we're getting towards the end, so if I should try to do a short summary of the ICT track, I think we heard from our politicians, the prime ministers and the deputy minister for trade and industry, that they will make sure the frameworks are in place for us to do business, which I think is a very good starting point. I think there are some good progress in between our governments in also making funds available to let us support the governments in developing the countries, and specifically supporting the development of Ukraine. We heard from Kyivstar that they're happy that the 3G auction will take place soon and that the infrastructure will be developed further. And I think part of developing Ukraine is also about making information available and making information transparent. Transparency will mean easier climate for business and less corruption. So that's an important initiative in itself. The third thing I noted is that you have highly skilled people in Ukraine. It's important to maintain that advantage in order to build the industries, including the ICT industry. And the good news is, as Roger says, we have a lack of IT specialists in Norway and in other Western European countries as well. So a combination of a good educational system and availability of resources will be a very good way forward. You will never have a problem with highly skilled people and get those to work. So we also heard that we have cultural similarities going all the way back to the Vikings. There are certain differences between our cultures as well, as Roger pointed out, and that we need to keep in mind. But all in all, it's my summary that working in the ICT industry must be the best place to be. We have a great future in terms of all the major things that the IT industry is making possible for other industries. And the ICT industry is the key driver of growth and for a better future. We've seen that over and over again. So we're lucky, that's my summary, that we are related to the ICT industry, and I think we together can create a good future for both our countries. So thank you for participating. I have got a note that you're all invited to the plenary session number 2, which takes place here at 3:30. And then at 5 o'clock there will be a seafood reception. I think that would be on the ground floor somewhere, but you just go after the smell. It's when it smells seafood, you're on the right track. So you're all welcome there as well for tasting a lot of good Norwegian seafood, I hope so. Thank you so much for participating.
Thank you.